Hey, I want to welcome everybody to the Sacramental Charismatic podcast. My name is Luke Garrity, and I'm one of the hosts, along with my co-host, Wes McLaughlin. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Recovering from COVID.
Yeah. Awesome. That'll be probably blocked by the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
So, well, we haven't recorded an episode for a super long time. You have had a baby.
I have had a baby. Yeah.
I'm going to blame it all on you.
I feel like that comes up every single time. It's just like, I was like, wait, it's not all because of that. I was like, wait. I was like, Luke cannot get off the fishing.
That's true.
He can't get off the river. So it's like,
it's fishing and church stuff is busy, but
okay.
We got a good topic for today. It's the Holy Week when we're recording this, and we're going to talk about how to be missional for Easter. And I think we're particularly talking about it from the context of like pastors, maybe church leaders, to think about how to be more missional for Easter.
Super practical. Like we're going to be very practical today.
Yeah. And so I think we should start off with like, what's the point of being missional?
What's the point of being missional on Easter?
Yeah.
I think it's a good question because we're not like Orthodox, we're not Catholic.
Yeah.
And so I feel like sometimes Protestant or non-denominational churches go through like a crisis of like identity on like what to do on Easter, like what to prioritize, what should we focus on, and all of that. And I think one of the advantages of being a non-denom or like Protestant sort of movement is that you can focus on being missional on Easter. And I think that is something that should happen all the time. But that's what I was thinking.
That's good. Well, I mean, I think even too, like that question of is that because you hear it from time to time. Actually, this question only comes up from really super churchy people, in my opinion, in my experience. Is what's the church for? Who's the church for?
Yeah.
Is it for the church? Is it for church people, or is it for the lost? And my answer's always been yes.
Yeah.
I think you see that
both end.
Yeah, it really is both and it doesn't. I think your goal is to prioritize discipleship, which includes non-believers and believers, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of, Paul in 1 Corinthians 14 when he lays out his theology of order, and worship. He seems to indicate that there were non-Christians that were attending the worship gatherings because prophecy was able to be an evangelistic gifting tool.
Totally.
So I think that question is actually really annoying. That's my opinion.
Well, that was great. Case closed.
Just laying it out there. I think anybody who asks that question, well, it's like anytime in my experience when people ask the question about women in leadership, it's always some person who's been in church for a long time and has been indoctrinated with a certain particular reading of scripture. So it's obviously it's a fair question, but the answer is actually, I think, pretty simple. It's yes.
And also in that passage, you could pretty much interpret it as Paul saying to prioritize the people who aren't, because he's saying don't do that.
Yeah,
prioritize
because
them because they're not going to know what's going on, and so it's like it's not about you all.
It's good. Which
is a good way to look at it.
Well, I think Christopher Wright has made eloquently, and he said eloquently in a few of his books that the church is has a mission. It's Jesus' mission, and so we should value reaching people who are outside of the church. But I think kind of leading into this question about how to be missional on Easter, what do you think the vision of Easter actually is? I guess that starting with that, what's the point of Easter?
Are you talking? Okay, I asked that question because
I know why
you were going to answer.
You're asking me.
I was like, wait, I was supposed to.
You come up with that question, and then you don't know the question.
Well, what I was thinking about was going back to a lot of churches thinking about, what do I prioritize on Easter? What is sort of should I be focusing on? And obviously the vision of Easter is always going to be obviously tied to the resurrection.
I sure hope so.
Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
In case there was any doubt about that.
Yeah.
And so you're being anchored by the resurrection of Jesus. And at the same time, like I said, if you're in a movement like ours, or like if you're part of a non-denominational, you're not going to have a lot of traditions associated with that, maybe. You know what I mean? Or like hardcore, like steeped in traditions. So there's a lot of like questions. A lot of churches will be like, okay, well, what should we do? Do we do like the kids come up and they do a
some kind of a pageant
or something like that? Yeah. Like there might be some churches that do that, or
there are.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I guess there's like a lot of questions that pastors might be asking. Okay, like what should we do on a Sunday service?
Oh, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, so that's
yeah.
Well, I think so observation about there's been a huge shift culturally in the United States. I think, and probably a lot of Western countries in the last. I've been in ministry for 25-ish years now, and I've seen huge shift. So like, I like to describe it as, we're no longer home team in a sense. Yeah. The Christians are no longer the home team.
Yeah.
And in some communities, obviously, there's a lot more friendliness to the church. Like in our community, it's a little bit more Bible Belt-ish, right? Yeah. So there's not a hostility to the church. But I think this is true for any community. In the sense that there's more and more people who are either unchurched or dechurched, or who, just have very little awareness about the larger story of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so, when it comes to Easter, and why I'm calling it actually Easter and not Resurrection Sunday, because I used to have it should be called Resurrection Sunday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a long time ago in my youthfulness.
Nice.
But we now live in a cultural context where I think Easter and Christmas Eve are two of the most, you have the most potential for getting non-churched, unchurched people into your building. If you're a local church that has a building and regularly worships, so shout out to the house churches and missional communities that maybe do it differently. So our context is a little bit specific here, but. There's been numerous polls and studies that I've read from a lot of different folks and I just anecdotally, in my own experience, people seem to be more likely to attend a church for the first time or maybe after a season of time on Easter and on Christmas Eve. I think there's something still in our culture that sees a value for that.
Yeah.
And it might depend on where you're at, but so I think that should drive a lot of your vision.
Yeah.
Right. Like if there's a potential for having, when you were in leadership here, I think one of our Sundays, one of our Easters that you were here, we had I don't know 100 new people.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, over the weekend.
Yeah, and we were planning for like maybe 50 at most.
Yeah. It was like, what do we do?
Nuts. Yeah,
standing room only. So. Because of that, I think because of the fact that, you should be intentional about a lot of what we're going to talk about today. It's kind of like if you don't have that axiom, if you don't have a target, you'll always hit your mark, right? If you don't go into the Easter season with some type of a intentionality, I think about that, then obviously maybe you won't have anybody, show up. Like it's been interesting in our local context here, because the only thing I can say is I feel like we have a bunch of momentum would be one way to think about it, or it would seem and appear that God's been at work in some really obvious, discernible ways.
Yeah.
So like the last couple of years, the last 4 years or 3 years, I should say, since the global pandemic, like we would, get 250 of these invite cards, and I would always have 170 of them left. It's like people were just really hesitant to invite people for whatever reason. I've had to reorder. I've ordered 3 different times now postcards, because we've had just every week people are taking them. I'm having people call me, hey, can I get some more postcards?
Wow.
But I think a lot of that is because we started like pushing that like 2 months ago. We started talking about, hey, Easter's coming, et cetera.
Yeah.
So the vision behind Easter, I think there has to be, the resurrection of Jesus is tied to the mission of God. And if the mission of God is about, making Jesus known, then that should be driving what we
yeah,
do, I guess,
yeah.
to some degree. So
No, that's good. That's good. And like to go back on what you were saying about why people like, do you have? Because when I think about why people would be coming on Easter or Christmas, one of the reasons I'm thinking there might be like some guilt or like,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
probably.
oh, like we should probably go to church. You know what I mean? That might be one reason why people are coming. Because I think that might be,
Yeah, lay it on thick and get the tithes. Like, yeah, you're guilty. We're gonna receive an offering. You can get out, like that type of stuff. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. Or like,
Should we do that? No,
it's the
sorry.
time to really pump your
really,
tithing.
You really want to. You really want to go hard.
But I was just thinking about like that might help people or pastors understand like, oh, if we had a better idea about why people are coming specifically on Easter, that might tailor it, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it's hard to know because people come for so many different reasons. Like in our setting, I'm expecting us to have 2 really full services. I mean, I all indication is that we're gonna be full.
Yeah.
And so I think, I know a lot of people have invited family members, friends, and I think, that's a diverse group of people. So there's probably some people who are coming because their friend invited them and they're like, all right, cool, I'll check it out.
Check it out, yeah.
Other people are probably maybe in crisis and are looking to find hope. Other people heard that there's donuts and coffee. You know, I mean, as simple as that is. We're having an egg hunt during our kids' church, so there might be some people bringing their kids.
Okay.
We had some people come for Christmas Eve that I haven't seen since Christmas Eve. I talked to them for a while, and they were like, "Yeah, we just want to get our kids exposed, to church on Christmas Eve." And it was like, "All right, cool." Yeah. So, I mean, I think, but to your point, if you're aware that there's people in the room that don't know the secret handshakes and don't speak clear Christianese, maybe you would want to be intentional about some of that. So, but I think, so maybe before we get into the how-to, because we are going to talk about how to do this. Yeah. It probably would be good for us to talk a little bit about I think there are some pastors out there, some church leaders that are concerned about, and I think we both share concerns about consumeristic church world. Yeah. Right? Is that fair?
No, totally.
I know you're really worried about that.
Oh, yeah, very, yeah. I speak about it all the time.
All you ever talk about is...
No, I think there's like this concern of like, oh, we don't want to be too seeker sensitive or too consumeristic, and sort of maybe that makes the church not authentic or whatever it may be. That might be a concern, and sort of understanding like what's the difference between that and being a welcoming and a hospitable church.
So when people ask that question, I've always wanted to know, is the goal then to be seeker insensitive? Yeah. Like, are we supposed to be hostile? Yeah. It just seems like
it's a weird dichotomy that's like crept up. And my instinct is to go, there's probably been the association with seeker sensitive and consumeristic churches that they don't then have depth, or like they're shallow or whatever it may be. And so a better way to think about it is like, well, if you're focused on becoming a welcoming and a hospitable church, like that's not eliminating depth. Yeah. Like the focus should be on that.
It's a false dichotomy.
It is a false dichotomy, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about one thing that Wimber said, so John Wimber, founder of the Vineyard, really influential church leader for me and for you, I'm sure, used to talk about when he was asked that question by people who were like, oh, I need more depth. He used to always say the meat is in the streets, right? Like you're going to get maturity and you're going to grow, when you go to small group, when you go out and do serving projects, when you're out doing the stuff, But I always think like Sunday morning, this is kind of going back to our previous thinking about the changing culture, is that I think 50 years ago, the church was pretty much 99% full of church people. Yeah. Who had probably been going to church because like everybody went to church. I think the church now, in some way, shape, or form has become a missional field, right? Because every week, like at least in our context, and I do think that pastors and, church leaders you have to serve and lead in the context that you have, right? Like, you can't pastor a church that you don't have in the the sense of like I'm not going to do a sermon that would be the same I would give if I was in say Kenya or different parts of the country or different local churches. Even there's vineyard churches I've spoke at that where I would do a totally different sermon in that context because of who like case in point, it's not a vineyard church, but I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago I preached at the church that Carol Wimber attends, and like there's all these like legendary vineyard leaders there, and I'm like, okay,
you're not going to do a basic Christianity.
I'm probably not going to. Yeah, I'm not like they wanted me to speak on the Holy Spirit. It's like, okay, I'm probably not going to be like, who is the Holy Spirit? Everybody there
is going to have a good idea.
Yeah. So, but by and large, in our church context, and I think healthy, missionally minded churches, there's an awareness that there's going to be a lot of non-church people potentially in the room if you do things correctly, I think, or if you're intentional. I mean, that's a better way to put it. I think that the church community can have space for discipleship to be happening for everybody, no matter where you're at, right? And that gets to like, it can't just be about Sunday. Like that's another thing too, is that really if your ecclesiology, if your model is Sunday only, then you're going to probably have a problem with just creating consumers,
totally,
and keeping people consumers. Because here's the thing I think is that most people who come to church the first time, including me, I'm coming as a consumer.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, what do you have to offer me?
Oh, totally, yeah.
So I think that people who ask that question generally, they either have been in a church for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to be a first time visitor. Yeah. Which, I mean, that's probably accurate when you say.
And that doesn't matter if you're a non-Christian or like been a Christian for forever. Like you're literally shopping.
Yeah.
Like you're shopping for churches.
You're looking for a church that's a good fit. I mean, you can put it all the spiritual language you want, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to find something that fits my needs or feeds
ticks the
me.
Boxes,
even that, like the super spiritual, depth people are like, I just need to have something that feeds me. Isn't that a consumeristic?
Yeah,
that's consumerism, right? So I love when there's a couple people that have started attending our church in the last few months that like legitimately were like, we're just looking for a place to serve. Like those are the kind of people that you're like, oh my gosh, thank you.
Can I pay you? No, wait, I was like, wait.
Please. Yeah, you're amazing. So I think what we're going to talk about, being more hospitable, being more intentional, does not have to be to build into just this consumerism discipleship model. Yeah. But that's going to depend a lot about how you follow things up and how do you do discipleship in your church, right?
Yeah.
Because again, if Sunday morning or if if it's just 1 or 2 meetings a week,
like I think what's important to note is like, and you've already touched on it, is like Easter's not going to be this like life-saving day for your church if you're needing it to like grow magically, and then the rest of the year nothing changes in your church or whatever it is. Like there's this like, yes, Easter is a big day, but also like it's linked to your overall church culture and health. And like you said, like you guys have been prepping for Easter for 2 months now with the congregations. You've been leading the congregation through going like, hey, we want to emphasize that this is a great day to invite people who don't go to church. Yeah. And so you've built that into the culture already. And that seems to be an important part. Yeah.
Well, like wouldn't it be like, probably this would be harmful, is let's say you like go hardcore with promoting and inviting and you get a ton of people, but then your church service is less than compelling, or you have nothing else after it.
Yeah.
Like that might actually hurt. Yeah. That actually might hurt the mission.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Because people are like, oh, this just confirms my suspicions about, maybe not. I don't know. But but I think part of the marketing or invitational culture is the words I like to use a lot of the time. It's like we're trying to have an invitational culture, but I think you have to help people. I mean, that's what would be a thing I'd tell pastors would be like, or church leaders, is that I think you have to make it realistic or effective or maybe easy for people to be able to invite friends. I mean, that's why I think those postcards are super easy. And what we found is actually the postcards we had like, I don't know, 250 or 300 of the postcards, and we have like 10 left now.
Yeah.
But what we had to keep on ordering was these little like square business card things.
Yeah.
That was like the hot thing. And I think it's because it's small, but it's got our information on it, super easy.
Yeah,
clear. Social media, like, man, I'm like convinced, I'm going to say something controversial. I'm convinced that if a church it really actually wants to reach people that are unchurched, that they should be on social media regularly. I mean, we have like a number of people that are involved in our social media here. And like, it's crazy to me that there's a lot of churches out there that just don't realize that there's literally hundreds of thousands of people. Actually, the thing about social media is that the impact you can have is actually global.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
And it's like no one budgets for that. It just makes no sense
it's
to
like
me.
Offhand, like, okay, we're just,
Totally. Like, I mean, so, cause I'm not talking about live streaming. We don't live stream. I've become anti live stream.
Yeah.
But, that was old news, man. But, but like really figuring out, how to, utilize, reels and, video clips and
video clips are key, like not pictures.
Totally.
Like pictures, but like
stories.
Videos are the biggest thing.
I mean, like utilizing it's not very hard to do this stuff, I don't think. Plus with like there's certain apps out there that can, like, I used to do all of our own graphic design, and now I never do. We have apps that have templates, and you just drop in your logos and boom, right? But I mean, social media is a really easy way to, I think, build momentum to get the word out about what you're doing. And it seems like like everybody's trying to figure out how do you create viral posts, but what I've observed is that it's just like the authentic. I mean, it's almost like the worse your video can be, better
totally.
It gets traction, which is really frustrating. Like I can do real editing, and I'm like, so you're telling me that the video. Because I got like in my fishing world, I have this like Instagram, it's all fishing stuff, and like I'll like make these really nice professional videos.
Don't do anything,
and I'll get like 500 views. I have like 3 clips of literally the funny dumb stuff, and like one's at like almost 100,000 views. It's like so more of that. So taking that into church world, like maybe the little short video of hey, after church service, blah blah blah. That's what we did. I mean, that's what we've seen, like the sermon recaps, or But also, I think also too, going along with the social media marketing promotion stuff, is that there needs to be a healthy balance between not just because we've gone really heavy on invitation. For Easter, probably too much. We've created a lot of content and we've been doing a lot of that, but we also are trying to do a lot of actual ministry through social media too. Like generally speaking, we try to, not just use social media to invite people to church, but like maybe sharing passages of scripture, videos with devotionals that can actually encourage, inspire, or, challenge people where they're at in that moment, rather than just, like come to us.
It's like you going to them,
just because
as you can.
I mean, you've haven't you seen that? Like, it's interesting. Like social media. I mean, I do have like this love-hate relationship with it in some ways, but like the anonymity factor of social media is really interesting too, because people will open up on social media if you regularly are on social media as a church community. It creates like I get people that we get people here in our church because we have a few people that check our DMs or whatever, but like people will send us messages asking really great questions about following Jesus, asking about ministry, needing prayer, all these different things. So, but I don't think that we would have that if we didn't have a consistent, regular, presence, for lack of a better word.
I mean, I think I saw like there's this like Catholic priest that went viral on TikTok, and he's got a huge following now simply because he was like literally just asking questions, answering questions that are like pertinent to people about the Catholic faith, or like, and it was like something as much as like, why does he wear the robe he does? Because like people are like, wow,
that's a great question.
You know what I mean? Like, so stuff like that I think is really important. And also if you think about it, like people even the people that are being invited by relatives and friends, guess what they're going to do? They're going to look up your church before they come.
100%.
Like either on your church website, which is also still important to have.
Yeah.
Not just have, but like
relatively decent. I will say 100%, and if it's not 100%, it's like 95.9999 repeating, so 96% of the people I talk to when I'm like, how'd you hear about our church? Because every time I see someone who I don't recognize, I always, hey, how long have you been coming to the Vineyard? Which is what I was told by Steve Nicholson to ask that question.
So Steve Nicholson.
Yeah, rather than saying, is this your first time?
Yeah,
and have them say, no, I've been coming here for 10 years. And you're like, oh, that's terrible. But, how long have you been coming to the Vineyard? Oh, it's my first time. Oh, great. How'd you hear about us?
Yeah.
It's, most of the time it's like, oh, so-and-so invited us. That's the first thing they say. And then secondarily, they say, oh, and I follow you on Instagram or, whatever Facebook, Like, in fact, we have this newer couple who this couple's like, they're so amazing. And there's like 10 couples like what I'm about to say, but like, it's been like whoa, why are you here? You're so amazing. But they came because they were looking for, they like went and listened to a lot of our sermons and listened to our content, and they were like, yeah, we just liked your guys' theology. Yeah. And I was like, sweet, you care about theology? This is amazing. Will you be our pastor?
Yeah. I want to fish more.
Yeah, I want to fish more. Will you be?
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I guess, maybe some advice, for people who, hopefully the cool thing about podcasts is like this could be something that is a resource for people next year. But I would definitely, build into your church's culture an awareness to why social media matters because people are there, how to do it. There's a lot of good resources out there, like for people who are trying to figure out how to do church social media that don't know how to do it, or just ask some of the Gen Z, Gen Alpha guys, people. Yeah. Find a 14-year-old person in your church and ask them how to do TikTok, and they'll be professionals. Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is like you have to be authentic.
Yes.
Because that, like, especially the younger generations, they smell out inauthenticity. Totally. Like, it's not like, so just whatever you do, even if it looks like a mess or dork. Whatever. Yeah, just like be authentic, and that's going to be like the fundamental aspect to.
Yeah, I think so
more
too.
Than quality or
and like even with more with the social media stuff, but I think this goes true about everything on your Sunday services and your ministry in general. It's like identifying what makes you unique, not better, but what makes you unique. What's your like superpower? And lead with those. Like. Because I think the reason why I really do think that there's essentially two reasons why our church has been, well, maybe three. Yeah, three reasons why our church has been growing significantly in the last, 4 to 5 months. I think that, obviously the first thing is that God's been moving. I want to say I can see evidence of the Spirit at work. So that's number one. Number two is there is a genuine come as you are vibe in our church. We lead with that. I think that is our superpower. We do have that vibe where we're not gonna, like, you don't have a church background, fine. You don't want to dress up, totally cool. I don't either. You are not sure what you believe about XYZ, cool. It's fine. You're welcome. So there is definitely a come as you are atmosphere, and it doesn't mean we don't believe in the second part of that vineyard value of don't stay as you are. Yeah. What we're seeing is people do come as they are. They interface with Jesus, and they start to change things. Yeah. And the third thing, so God is at work. Come as you are, and then third thing is the authenticity. Like I hear from people all the time, like I feel so welcomed from, and which it makes me really proud of our church community because that's them. That's not me, right? There's no performance on my part.
All by yourself, yeah.
I can't do any of that. So it's people being genuinely, authentically welcomed. I think is a big deal. So, being able to capture that and put it into your social media stuff is. That's hard. It's harder to do that, but it only happens if you are authentic, right? Yeah. It's not all polished video clips, it's got to be a lot of just chilling, with the camera. Yeah. I mean, that's what's crazy about these stupid cameras, or these phones, is that they all make it where we can do all this stuff.
Oh yeah. It's so easy.
Yeah. So, I think another kind of going into probably talking about our Sunday, like a
the
Sunday service.
Yeah, yeah.
With the leadership side of things. So first of all, if you are a pastor or a church leader and your church does not have an order of service, can I start there?
Please do.
You're crazy. You need to get one ASAP.
The Spirit's still going to be at work.
You can still.
The Spirit's not going to leave the building just because you have an order of service. Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit can actually help you plan on Monday. That's what I have found out. And I'm charismatic. But I think an order of service is really helpful.
Yeah.
It does not matter what size of the church you're in. I mean, we actually saw that. We started a Celebrate Recovery the first week of January. And Celebrate Recovery has a lot of different ministries, and there's a lot of small groups that are tied to it. But essentially, the meeting is a church service. It's got its own worship.
Okay.
It's got its own. Everything about it is. There's a message from the Bible.
Gotcha.
So it's an extra service that we have going on right now. And the first few weeks of attending, I think our first Tuesday night is when we have it. There was like 70 people here.
Dang.
And it's a church service.
Yeah.
But it was like, as an outsider in the back, I was just watching in the back, kind of observing. And it was a little clunky, not in a bad, like, oh, you guys are doing it wrong, but it was clunky.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, we our worship pastor and I met with the couple that leads it and just were like, hey, here's some resources. Here's an order of service.
Yeah.
Here's some things to think about your transitions and, not having undesigned empty space, but actually designing it.
Yeah.
And it's instantaneously, it was like, oh yeah, now the service is really, really well executed.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing I would say is you should make sure that your services organized somewhat.
Yeah.
Your
There's
leadership
some
team
streamline. There's some level of like consistency. Yeah.
It's setting your leaders up who are participating and leading for success, setting them up for success because they don't have to like be looking at you. Do I go now?
Yeah.
Because it's super awkward.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing I'd do. And if you need help with that, Wes would love to give you. No, okay, Wes will not help you. Sorry. So, but with leadership, I think we should talk a little bit about who does what on Sunday.
On Easter Sunday. Yeah.
What do you think?
No, you can't stop it right there.
Why?
Okay, well, leadership staffing.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking about who's going to be up on stage.
Yeah,
who's
or
going to be like
greeters or
greeting. Who's going to be like doing all
do you
that
put
type
do you
of
put
stuff.
the grumpy pants person at the door to welcome people?
That's a great question. Well, hopefully you don't have a grumpy pants on your greeting
There
team
are people
at all.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But there are some people in our church communities that are, I don't know how to put it other than they're not as gifted
Totally.
with the gift of joy or a smile.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Sounds bad, but I don't mean it in a bad way. They're just people that like are maybe or maybe they're more introverted and they are not going to thrive in a environment where 180 people walk past them in 10
greeting
minutes.
them. Yeah. 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 So that is a great point. Like, so just like we said, hopefully that isn't something you have to be worried about. But if it is,
I want to be clear. That's not all introverts.
No, yeah,
because you're kind of introverted.
Yeah, I'm like an omnivert.
You're an omnivert, yeah. Because I become more of an omnivert, probably because you ruined me. But but my wife is a super introvert.
Yeah,
but she's also very, very good greeter and very welcoming.
But she's also very warm and welcoming. Yeah,
yeah,
so
exactly. I'm not at all. So the introverts listening to this, don't jump to the conclusion that I think all introverts are.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm talking about grumpy pants. Okay, go back to my original.
I didn't bring up introverts.
It's a technical term, actually. It's in the Bible, I swear, somewhere. Grumpy pants. So what would you say? What do you think?
I already told you. That's what I thought.
Just okay. What?
Well,
I don't think we got it. What?
Dang it.
What's your thoughts?
I don't know. I haven't been in this role of deciding this. I feel like you have been.
You have. Okay. First of all, you were a part of all these decisions for at least 3 years.
Well, I think like
what's your intuition? I'm gonna big up to you is that one thing that there's a lot of things about you that I really love and I appreciate and I think you're strong at, but this is one. I know. We're friends. You have always, since I've known you, and I've known you for, I don't know, 10 years,
Has it been that long?
Yeah,
Holy.
probably. It probably has
probably
been.
close
I've been
to
here
that,
for 8, yeah. So about 10 years, because we knew each other like 2 or 3 years before you
before I
came
came
here.
here,
Is that I think you've always been very missional minded. And you always have had an outward, like you get the mission of the church. Like I mean, that's why you were a great fit for here, because I didn't have to like listen. The mission of the church is really important.
Yeah.
Like you got it. I didn't have. We skipped way past that. We went to like stage 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what's your intuition about, on a Sunday morning? Like, what do you like think about from the I mean, if your church has parking attendance, because you're a mega church, okay, from there on to everything, what are your thoughts about staffing or leadership or on stage, all that stuff?
Yeah. I think, well, in general, you're going to want to just have people that are going to naturally going to want to connect with other people. So, like, if your gifting is to naturally connect with people, then as a leader, like, you should have a conversation with that person and just be like, hey, on Easter, there's going to be a bunch of new people. So this is not like a formal role, but I can see like having a conversation with some people, just being like, hey, like, there's going to be a bunch of new people. If you're able to just like spot them or connect with them, hopefully like that'll be a natural thing that they already are doing, because you're already seeing that in them. I'm also thinking of like,
it's a great idea. I'm writing that down.
Because I think that's really important.
Persons to be intentional about welcoming people.
Yeah. And they don't need to have a formal role, but they can just be like,
I'm going to give them a title.
Roaming, yeah. Roamers.
Roamers.
Yeah. Roamers. Because I can, like, in my own church context, I think, like, there's obviously, like, there's a few people that are obviously so much more gifted, not more gifted, they just have a gifting of just, like, naturally connecting with new people, or, like, just being able to, like, have that easy conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like, naturally hospitable.
Yeah, naturally hospitable,
warm,
and they can connect with people, too, like, go connect people with other people.
Yeah.
That's also important. So if, like, you meet someone and you found out, like, oh, they live close to someone like, oh, hey, I want to introduce you to someone or whatever.
That's a great idea.
Because I think that's also really important. As soon as you start having people make connections with other people, that's like gold mine right there. Because then you're like already creating new relationships.
Yeah, that's good.
So I think that is really important. And then obviously, like you said, like if you're having someone who's serving the coffee and they don't say anything at all ever, like maybe like just don't staff them for that Sunday. I don't know. But
yeah, this Sunday's not going to work.
I don't know.
This isn't going to work.
So bad. Or like partner them up with someone.
Yeah, no, that's what
you know
I mean.
That's partner them up. That's always the best route.
Yeah, well, because like there's some. So I think there is a difference between someone who's uncharitable or unkind.
Yeah.
Right. Versus someone who's just maybe less comfortable with being more outgoing or,
Totally.
So I think one way to get around that would be, to partner them up with somebody who they're friends with, who can help them get them out their shell maybe a little bit. Totally. Or whatever. So that makes sense.
Because I think just with that, it's not like, I think what's also important is like, if you are an introvert and you come in and you're just like bombarded with extroverts, that's probably also going to be like, oh, well, this is a lot now. And so it's, I think you're wanting to have a good mixture.
There is a balance there, right, too, because I think if you, if you're a first-time visitor, this is a really important thing, I think, for people to realize, is that you have to really think about what are the feelings that a non-church person has.
Yeah.
So I have actually spent money, and hired people to come to a church for the first time and ask them for their feedback. I've also had a lot of conversations with people who have talked to me about what kind of things were going through their head before attending, And there's like a variety of some people are super scared. Some people have anxiety because the last time they were in a church, they experienced some horrific situation, and whether it was spiritual abuse or just people were jerks. There's so many different things, there might be a worry there, but there's like common questions are like, will there be people like me? Will I know what to do? Right. Cause churches are not very good at this. When I have visited churches in the past, my observations were always like, generally speaking, we have forgotten what it was like to be first timers. You know, like we don't have good signage. We don't know. We're not clear about where the bathrooms are, where the kids go, or is it okay to have coffee in the sanctuary? Just things like that.
So many things. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's just
it's super scary.
Super. Yeah. Or it maybe not even scary. It's just confusing.
Yeah.
Like that. I think that a lot of people are just confused because you know, we take it for granted. Like, you know, the first time I ever went to a liturgical church, to be honest, you know, part of my, you know, it's like, and that'll be a future topic, is how to be a missional liturgical church. Is that it was like, I didn't know when sit, stand. There was like no clarity. There was like, idea. And they did not care at all about me not knowing what to do, you know, which was like, oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I think, you know, with the, I guess, you know, the overall, you don't want to like bombard people, right?
Yeah.
So I like the idea of having roamers who are like, you're picking, it's almost like that role. It's not even almost. That role has to be someone who's gifted, who has the life and the culture of the church, that can be intentional, but also like, you know, when someone's like, I don't really want to talk to you, be like, okay, cool. Well, we're so glad you're here. And then, you know, move on. You know? So yeah, that's good. Okay. So you got roamers, you got right coffee people.
And then also just, I mean, you also got to think about it. Like if you're, I think on stage 2 is a huge thing. Like just if all the people speaking are like, look exactly like you. And like, or like, and I don't want to be like, don't be like, oh, so like a fake and like
really good looking, younger.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah. I got you. Thank you.
Younger.
Yeah, younger.
How old are you now?
Old. 45, man. It's old.
You're not 45. Are you 45?
I'm ancient now. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
I know. I didn't get a Christmas present from you or a birthday present, so yeah.
But just in terms of that, like, you just want to be conscious. Like, if you're an egalitarian church and every single guy or every single person that's spoken is a white middle-aged guy, like you might want to be like, oh hey,
or a black 50-year-old male. It doesn't, right? Not having any women on stage is like a problem.
Is going to be a problem, for sure. So like, not that, but like hopefully like that's built into your culture, and it's like not only on Easter. It's like, okay, we've got to make these quick fixes
once a year.
We
have women speak. Yeah,
it's like the college
in honor of the fact that the resurrection was announced by women. We're going to allow a woman to do the announcements today. That's probably
exactly.
A problem. Okay.
Yeah. No, right. So, but just being conscious. Just being conscious of that, as well as like is like the demographics, as well as just like race, ethnicity. If like you do have different cultures, ethnicities in your church, but you don't have anyone representing those cultures up on stage, then you might just be like,
I think that's really good. Well, I mean, we were just talking about that a few weeks ago. I was talking about that with some church leaders about how one loss that we had with you and your wife leaving, mostly your wife leaving, was your Irene was so she was so central to us being able to effectively like lean into the Latino community because she can speak Spanish well. She is a great leader. I mean, there was just so many parts of that, and so that was a loss because we've had to like really, try to figure out who are the people that are called and gifted and can kind of step into that role, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think that you pointed out like what's reflective of your demographics, right? Like making sure to be intentional to model healthy diversity where it's like, we don't have just one, because I would take it even one step further and say, I think it's really important to not have, like if the quote unquote senior pastor does the welcome, the announcements, the offering, communion, preaches, and maybe in some churches does the song. In our church community, that would be really unhealthy, right? Because that's not an everybody gets to play model, right? That's hey, we have a superstar.
He's going to do everything.
So I think that not only do you want to have diversity in the sense of like allowing a variety of different gifted people to be able to lead and to serve, but it's also important to model like the culture of the church being not a one-man show or one-woman show. Like we actually have a variety of different people that serve here, and that are part of our team. So that seems to like mean that you have to be really super intentional about scheduling. Cause I will say one thing that we do is like we, month and a half ago started really thinking through who we were going to have, be up on Sunday morning, because we know like, hey, there's going to be a lot more first time visitors. It's not the Sunday to maybe have somebody that hasn't had a lot of experience speaking, for lack of a better way to put it, it's like, hey, let's really try to lead with our best foot, like let's totally be intentional, so they,
I know. I was thinking about that because it's like, I'm thinking about communion, which I help lead at our church, and it's like for Easter, I'm not going to put up someone that's only led communion once, you know what I mean, or who is like just started leading, like. Because also I just don't feel like that's fair on them either, because they're probably going to feel like a ton of pressure or
totally,
so, stuff like that.
That's an interesting. When I've talked to people who are, because we have a communion team, we have a pastor who oversees like communion now.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because like I don't have to do anything, so I just remove myself.
Awesome.
Yeah, remove myself from everything. But that was like the hardest one to give up. Actually, as a Sacramental Charismatic dude, that was so hard to be like, all right,
yeah, you go.
Yeah, I'm just on the schedule now.
Yeah,
I'm one of
awesome.
6 or 7 people. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But talking to some of the people we have now 2 newer people who are coming in, and like the anxiety they have from doing it, it's like
huge.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm like, I could go up there with absolutely zero prep. Zero notes, and I can word for word do it, because I've done it 10 million times, and I forget that.
Yeah.
So hearing a first timer, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
that is kind of scary.
It's scary, yeah.
Oh,
I forget that too. Like when I ask people, like I will ask people maybe a little bit too nonchalantly about like leading, like, hey, you want to lead? And it's like, and they're like, okay, let me
panic attack.
Let me go pray about that and all of this. And I'm like, and I completely forget. I was like, like
you're like, what's there to pray about?
Yeah, like
it's the Eucharist.
No, totally.
You're honored. You should be honored to. Yeah. So that's good.
Anyways,
yeah. Okay, so I guess what we're kind of talking about is being intentional.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the theme, right? Being intentional. But giving everybody who is going to speak probably some direction about, hey, like I always tell people, you have to introduce yourself.
Yeah. My gosh, that's such a huge
Do not assume that like
people know you.
Yeah, and even like we'll probably be more intentional because like we're a small enough church, where sometimes I will, because I still have like, even though we've kind of entered into like there's probably 400-ish people that go to our church. I still will be like, all right, well, go talk to Doug. And it's like no one knows who that is. Even though I know, a lot of people know who Doug is, but yeah, like getting away from that, because that's still like small church thinking. Totally, I do know that, but it's like I refuse. Like I'm still doing it. Yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway. But on I think you should do this every Sunday, but don't assume that there's people in the room that don't know your name. So introduce yourself. Say, hey, because every Sunday, first thing I say is, hi, my name is Luke. I'm one of the pastors here at the Vineyard. So having all of the people who are speaking to be kind and hospitable. We have the saying we say in our leadership team is that clarity is kindness. Yeah. So, be That's clear about who you are. So I think, having everybody do that, but just really trying to, whoever's speaking, be aware that there's going to be unchurched, non-churched, potentially hostile to church people too, who are like coming, who have an attitude of like, well, because I've had a number of people in the last like 6 months who came kind of kicking and screaming, and they kind of came because somebody basically kind of was like, no, you really need to check it out. And they were like, all right, we're going to go. And I'll find out what's the problem. And now they're like serving on teams because we got past that. But they came in hostile. Yeah. Like the first minute, the first time you say something that's not true. I'm like, oh my gosh, So I better prepare my sermons more than
don't say
Sunday.
Anything wrong. Don't say anything wrong on Easter.
That also, yes, no heresy. So, okay. So we kind of covered a lot. Let's jump into music selection.
Yeah. This is all you.
I don't play any musical.
We put that in there, and I was like, we have no idea.
You and I are the wrong. Yeah, I got a lot of opinions.
Just don't do any just avoid bad theology. I don't know what else to say.
I'm tempted to
focus on resurrection themes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Be positive. Yeah. I mean, personally, my opinion is, again, lead strong. I think it's
Yeah.
good to have, your best musicians, or have your good musicians, and also like have newer musicians maybe with those musicians, because it might be a good opportunity for them to see, to serve.
Totally.
There's a lot of other people can tell you great advice on the worship side of things. But as far as songs go, I think, my opinion is, some people would say it's Easter Sunday, let's have 45 minutes of music. Let's have 6 to 7 songs. My opinion, yeah, keep it to 3.
Yeah. Max 4.
Yeah, we're doing our max is 4.
Yeah.
We're going to do 3, and we're going to have one at the end to end it big.
Yeah.
I do think that having songs that are big are good.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't do a good. I mean, I think someone can get up there and have a acoustic guitar and probably kill it.
Yeah.
For sure. But I like having a good strong start. It is a celebration. That is part of it, because it's like we're talking a lot about being intentional about being aware of the non-Christians. We have talked a lot about that. For me, and for the hundreds and whatever Christian people that are in your room, if you're Columbus Vineyard, thousands, whatever, I don't know, but like there is a celebration aspect of it, right? Like Jesus is alive.
Yeah.
He victoriously conquered sin and death, and the grave did not hold him. So give us our opportunity to get into it.
And also, like, I think just in terms of, going back to like the differentiations between like charismatic or Protestant movements compared to like Catholic or Orthodox, it's like, I remember going to Orthodox church and I was like, we didn't participate in singing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was bummed out about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of our liturgy, is like a participating in like singing, and it's a big deal. And so that really sort of sets like the culture and the liturgical practices that we have, So
that's great. Yeah, because it's already part of our liturgy. Yeah, it's our part of our habits and our rhythms and our orientation and our vibe, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that like I think just thinking through, like, you're wanting to have a central theme throughout your music, and be intentional and thoughtful about it. It's not warm up to the sermon.
Yeah, no.
Right? Like a lot of people go to church in our type of churches for the music. Yeah. Right? So I think, being really intentional to think through what songs, I mean, obviously you and I are always going to stress good theology, being a part of that. Okay, so communion.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
So it's not a yes or no, it's a yes.
Do communion.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say. Like, do communion. If anything, because it's like, make communion like an altar call if you want. Like, that's a great place for people to experience Jesus' grace for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, there's no resurrection without the cross, though, right? So there's a recapitulation or a recentering or a renewing or there's a retelling of the death of Jesus, and there should be, at least in any time we celebrate the Eucharist. Yeah. I'm with you. It's not there's.
I think like if you want
if you want to be a Christian, I'm just going to say it. If you want to be a Christian, you should have communion.
Yeah, and if you're a pastor and you're like, oh, do I do an altar call at the end of my sermon? This might be a way of, instead of doing that, which you might not want to do for whatever reason, you can do it during communion.
Yeah. Or because maybe we should mention this, you and I both hold to open table.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's listeners who, maybe if they have a Roman Catholic background or they're Roman Catholic, there are a few Roman Catholics who listen to us. They have messaged me.
Or like if you're a Baptist, or there's a lot of other...
Yeah, we don't care about the Baptists. Sorry, I'm just kidding. We do. I have a lot of Baptist friends. But if you are a closed table advocate, then maybe you're going to struggle with what I'm going to say. But I do, we'll eventually we've talked about doing a podcast on making a case for an open table. But I think, if you are taking an open table, or at least you see the table as a missional opportunity, like you're saying, you could do an altar call, but it's like really a call to the table, right? And I think that might actually, because we receive communion every single week, and we don't pass things in people's seats. We have the whole entire congregation comes forward to receive, and part of that, I think, on a practical level helps train ourselves to receive and to go forward for grace. And so it becomes more, I think it becomes more natural to actually be able to come forward to receive prayer.
Gotcha.
So like you could actually receive communion and use it as a stepping stone to give people an opportunity to make a first step towards Jesus.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the service, you could build right off of that. And then that's your gospel presentation, and you seal the deal, as they say in certain circles. But yeah, I mean, communion to me, though, is like,
Well, firstly, the gospel should always be presented in communion.
100%.
So it's like, that's part of it, is like the communion is the gospel.
And the beauty is that if you read 1 Corinthians 11:23-26, you are reading the gospel.
Gospel, yeah.
It's
like the right
clarity.
Clarity, yeah.
Broken body, shed blood. So okay, we
do communion.
Yeah, yes. That was the shortest. Okay, so announcements. Whatever you do, don't do a 10-minute announcement of two people standing on stage talking.
And don't invite everyone to every event for the next year.
Fair.
Pick one.
I
would say pick one event that you want, like, that will be relevant to non-church people and church people. Whatever that event is, pick that one, and that's it.
Yeah, like we're going to have an announcement video. Also, I'm a big advocate for videos. I don't think you should have people do announcements anymore because they can't not talk for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't. When I do the announcements, if I ever do the announcements, it's a 10-minute announcement video. So I'll even have a script or an outline in front of me, and on the screen, announcement video under 2 minutes. Most of our videos are 1 minute and 30 seconds. In and out.
And they don't have to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
You could have it done in 30 minutes.
So we have a church app, and we just basically are like, download the church app. All of our events are there.
Yeah.
It's a way to connect.
Yeah.
Here's one or two. On Easter, I agree. One thing. We generally mention 3 things, which generally includes like youth group or whatever. But so I would say do not. But the language you use, again, even with your videos, when we script our announcement videos, that's why they're easy to control.
Yeah.
Like the timing.
You don't have to worry.
Yeah, we write it, but the person who records that video introduces themselves and assumes that whoever's listening to it doesn't know the secret handshakes, doesn't know all the language. So we try to, really be intentional about that. And, for anybody watching this video, maybe there's a church planner or their church is small. Like, you could literally just use your phone to do your church announcements.
Yeah.
It is not, there's apps
doesn't have to be a big.
Yeah, there's apps that are teleprompters, like we own, we've got like 3 like major cameras. We got a teleprompter. We have like this $2,000 microphone. It's like crazy. The stuff that I've bought over the years for myself. But point being is that we don't need any of that. We could. Yeah. I've had times where I'm like, if I'm in another country and there's a video needed, boom. Yeah. So it'd be smart to do. So that's all I would say that about. Anything else to add about announcements?
What language would you use for visitors? Would you say visitors, or do you say if you're new here?
That's a good question. I don't know what matters, if it matters. Maybe it probably does.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like to say, we say if you're new or newish.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of people that are like newish.
Yeah.
Like, how long have you been coming here? For like 6 months. Once a month for 6 months is like kind of newish.
Only 6 times in.
Yeah. So like we always say for our newcomers lunch, we always say, hey, if you're new or newish to the vineyard. But we also would use language like if it's your first time with us. I don't think we use the word guest as much. I have heard people talk about. I think when we went to that large church gathering, I think we did hear about.
They were pretty like.
Don't use the word. Yeah. Don't use the word guest or don't. Yeah. I think, maybe I've heard that like guest implies they're not part of. Yeah. So that's why I think that probably is why we have chosen to generally say, hey, if you're new to the vineyard, because it doesn't, it kind of, I don't know, and I guess part of this is too, is are we really going to trick people by the word we use with guest
or visitor?
Yeah,
or
I don't know.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it's a good question though.
I like that. I think if you're new to the vineyard, I think that's a great, because that covers first time and like sort of first timers.
Yeah. I feel and I feel like that a lot of that's probably owed to Steve Nicholson.
Yeah.
Just conversations I've had with him, like how long have you been coming to the vineyard versus is it your first time?
Yeah.
And then rather than saying, if you're a first time guest, we've always just talked about, hey, if it's your first time at the vineyard, or hey, if you're new or newish to the vineyard, so I don't know. It's worked so far. We haven't had anybody leave our church because we said new.
Guest,
so far. Maybe they did. They leave for other reasons. Okay, preaching topics.
This is all you.
What we're doing right now is we're working through, by the way, if you're listening to these topics, we're working through kind of the order of service, like how we do it here. I don't know how you do it in your church of 2 or 3. You have a kid now, but preaching topics. Well, I mean, you've preached? Would you talk about Jesus? Good job.
The resurrection.
Good job.
Okay, here's a good one. Preaching, because a lot of people will be like, well, how much do you cater to non-church people? And I feel like this whole podcast is about non-church people.
Yeah.
But what do you do in your sermons to sort of to make it towards both your church and non-church people?
Yeah. Well, so we're in a sermon series right now called Reasonable Faith.
Okay.
And it's basically been apologetics. I have not used that word, by the way, yet. Wow. I'm so proud of myself. Dang. Yeah, 4 weeks in, have not said apologetics. Nice. But we like my first week, we talked about how historically one of the things that separates Christianity from other religions is that Christianity invites the skeptics to analyze the evidence, whereas other religions oftentimes say believe despite the evidence.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talked about how, Paul invites people to, for example, to like, hey, go research the resurrection.
Yeah.
Jesus appeared to James, to the other apostles, to myself, to 500, right?
Yeah.
And then we talked about the second week, we talked about how can a loving God allow human suffering or evil? We've talked about, is Jesus the only way? We've talked about the process of salvation, how people need to explore. So we come up to Easter. It's like, well, this is the week to lay down a historically reliable, evidence-based case for the resurrection. No.
Yeah.
Not doing that. Even though I'm very tempted to do that. But I just think that on Sunday, again, going back to like, if there is a room full of a bunch of church people and a bunch of non-church people, I got to thread a needle. Because I think preaching is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not natural for some people to be able to think through, because I do think that there's some people who like have to work extra super hard to be intentional about speaking to like I think that comes for me. It's more if anything, that's what I'm naturally good at. Like so anyway, like so actually last night I was praying because I didn't have anything yet. So I'm a week. It's Monday when we're recording this, and I was like, "What should I speak about?" Well, I know I'm going to talk about the resurrection.
That's pretty good for you. Like, what are you talking about?
You know what?
By Monday, you're already stressing?
My reputation precedes me because normally Sunday morning. Yeah. Okay. Well, this sermon series I've actually been done by Wednesday every week. So thank you very much.
Wow.
I know, like totally different, but so. I think what I'm going to be talking about is, so again, it's this goal of trying to, every year, trying to really glorify God and serve people. Those are the two things, right? So I've been thinking a lot about wanting to I do think it's the day we celebrate the resurrection. And then it's also a day where there's all these different themes connected to Jesus' victorious demonstration of he is Lord, right? He's vindicated.
Yeah.
There's so many themes. That's the one thing too, is I say pick a theme.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think it's the Sunday, we're going to go over the 7 themes of the resurrection,
Yeah.
It's not the moment to talk about he's vindicated, and he's also demonstrates he's God, and he also has victory over sin and death, and he also conquers, the grave, and like there's all these different, like N.T. Wright, you're not going to do the resurrection of the Son of God, the whole entire book in your sermon. But like there are themes of like it demonstrates new beginnings. I think the resurrection it does help us see that there are new beginnings, right? Because all the disciples think that it's over, right? But there's this new beginning that the church then like launches, and the Spirit, comes at Pentecost, and then they start telling everybody everywhere that Jesus was raised from the dead.
Yeah.
But so what I'm actually going to talk about is, as I was thinking about it, because it was Palm Sunday yesterday, right? And I was meditating on, so it goes from Palm Sunday, it works through, as I'm reading the harmony of the Gospels, I'm reading every day of the day, the Holy Week, right?
Yeah.
So then we get to Friday, and it's, Good Friday, and it's the cross, and, Jesus is crucified. He says it is finished, and into his hands he commits himself to God the Father, and then he dies, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the resurrection. So the phrase I'm going to be building the sermon around is that, actually I have it right here, is a lot can happen in 7 days.
Nice.
And because I think that you see that in the biblical narrative is that a lot does happen over the course of those 7 days. That's what struck me, is like, that is like a crazy final week. Yeah. I mean, like the suffering alone that Jesus goes through. But like, imagine Monday, Jesus knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Jesus knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Wednesday, Jesus knows what's going to happen. Thursday, Jesus knows what's going to happen. Friday, he experiences it, right? Like he knows it's like towards the end of his life, right? Even in the limitation of the incarnation, in the fact that he, the Philippians 2, that he doesn't operate under all the privileges of being divine, right? He still knew what was going to happen, because he said multiple times, like, I'm going to the cross, right?
Yeah.
Heavy week. And so, like, I was thinking about practical for us, like, we have these moments where we go through really terrible situations, crises, and I think that's one of the things that we can get from the resurrection, is that a lot can happen in a week. Because the resurrection happens, right? So I obviously just came up with this idea yesterday as I was praying and thinking about the whole narrative of the final week, but I'm gonna craft this sermon that just builds how Jesus' resurrection, the victory over death and darkness and whatnot, does help remind us that a lot can happen. Like, right, with God, all things are possible, basically. So those are the skeletal bones of what I'm working with right now. But it'll have like celebrating the cross, the resurrection, and then have practical application. Because I think that's the big thing. So is that there needs to be
some sort of like takeaway.
Like, how are people going to have hope? The question I always in the back of my mind is like, how can a single mom who has no church background, how will she leave this place either inspired, convicted in a positive Holy Spirit way, encouraged? Like, those are the questions that's the question I always, for whatever reason, I always think that person for me who I'm trying to really make sure that I'm intentional about is the single mom. Who's got 3 kids crawling on her lap,
working full-time job.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great. And I think it's almost like a trick question, is like, oh, like, should your Easter sermon be for, like, how do you prepare it? It's like, well, I don't, especially for something like Easter, like, you're literally retelling the story. It's the major part. It's like, you're just retelling the story.
Totally.
And then you're just picking 1 or 2 things that you're
connect the dots.
Applying it. Connecting the dots and then applying it to your context.
I think that's true.
There's like don't overthink it in that way. It's like, don't unpack your entire seminary degree into this. Don't do that.
That's
like, don't try and fit as much as you can in this. I think that.
I think actually we should say this is, if you don't care about reaching unchurched, non-church, new to church people, carry on.
Then you shouldn't have been listening to us.
Exactly. It's like, you don't buy in. But okay, so ministry time. What was the opportunity to receive prayer? Response. Yay or nay?
What do you mean, yay or nay?
Are you gonna do it? Do you do it on Easter Sunday or not?
Like inviting people up for prayer? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
You're not?
I don't know.
You're not?
I haven't thought about it yet.
Dang. Tell me, why wouldn't you?
I don't do it every Sunday. Terrible. Here's why. Actually, didn't we do it? I feel like we did a podcast on this. But just because I think that ministry time does not always have to be at the end of the service.
Yeah.
Ministry time doesn't always have to include coming forward. Sometimes we'll do it where it's like, hey, wherever you're at, people around you, I actually intentionally try to do ministry time in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So that way it doesn't reinforce the wrong things.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So sorry, you're saying in terms of like ministry time specifically having people come forward.
Yeah.
Not doing it away completely.
Oh yeah, not completely.
Oh,
I'm just saying Easter.
Okay,
We're talking about Easter service here, man.
Yeah.
Where you been? You've been just talking about church in general this whole time.
Yeah. Like, we're talking about Easter?
Actually,
dang it.
Can I say actually everything we have said I would apply to every other service?
No, it's
of
true.
All time.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
was a trick. Saying Easter, how to be missional for Easter was a trick to get you to be missional.
Yeah, just like this is actually a template across the board.
Yeah, that's actually
that's
not
true.
lying.
Okay, no, I mean that's a tough one for me, and I'm not sure because there's almost like you could probably have a plan, but then the Holy Spirit could say something to you.
That's what I was just thinking.
That's like, and then
I think holding it loosely.
Totally, yeah,
like because you know what is interesting. We're having 2 services, and I know previously when we were at multiple services in the past,
second service was always better.
No, it was funny. Is I always liked the first service better than the second. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I felt like the preaching generally at the second service was like, oh, I got this.
Yeah.
I know what jokes work and what don't. Or what's interesting too is like some jokes work good with the first service, and you won't use them for the second, but then you won't use them for the first. But so actually applying that to ministry time. Is we have this big prayer in our tradition of come Holy Spirit, and really being intentional to wait on the Holy Spirit's leading, and I think that would probably be a really important caveat to have with ministry time, yay or nay. I mean, I mean, I think that you should definitely have space to respond to the Holy Spirit. In fact, I'm even thinking now, it's like that's probably one of the reasons why you don't want to pack the service too heavy, because actually this is kind of funny, or not funny, but so we use Slack, with our internal church dialogue, and with our leadership team, when I had sent everybody the order of service for this Sunday, some of the comments I had was I actually said. So I laid out 3-song first set, and then so these are all just in a string of a lot of planning. But I had said, after I laid out the kind of the timing on what we wanted, like for our welcome, we're going to do 2 minutes max because we always do a welcome, clarify where the bathrooms are, nursery, cry room, whatever. 3 songs, and then communion. And then at the end of it, I said, this should give us, after laying it out, it should give us a little bit of room at the end for our final song and for some ministry time. So it's like, being really intentional with our planning gives us the space to be able to have time for the Spirit because, the Spirit might move during the music where it's like, nope, we need to respond. God's doing something. Because we've had multiple times in the last few months where it's like very obvious that the presence of the Lord is in a special, unique, charismatic way. We would say like he is actively engaged in doing some work in the room. So like, let's not move on. Right? Let's actually lean into that a little bit. So kids church,
do it again. Like we needed
be
to
good.
Yeah.
You and I are probably the wrong people. I like how we're self-aware enough to know, like, yes, 2 thumbs up.
That.
But kill it though. I mean, I think do it well.
Do good.
Yeah, because and that's actually a way you can get a lot of people to come too. You can actually invite people to come because of what you're doing with the kid stuff, and so I would say
that's a huge reason for a lot of people staying.
Yeah. We have. I mean, our kids pastor. Have you met her yet?
Yeah.
Okay. She's like, as she says, jokingly, we always joke around. She says she's a winner.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I'm a winner. I'm like, whoa, she is though. She's like next level. But she's so winsome and she just has such a heart for these kids. Like the kids love her.
Yeah.
I mean, like it would be if it was like, okay, it's between her. Okay, I'm dying. Yeah. There's no question. So yeah, having a really strong kids ministry is, I think, very crucial, and there's some really great resources that people can find about that. But follow up, what?
Like, I think just being intentional or thinking about like how are you creating a space for visitors to like follow, like for you to follow up with them, or like give them the opportunity to like either through a connect card or like at the end of the service, like, hey, if you're wanting to talk to one of the pastors after the service, like we'll be around there or whatever, you know what I mean? Like just thinking about building that in as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just having some type of. Well, I was thinking, that's one part of follow up for sure. Hey, I'd love to talk to you after the service. And it's tough. I'm not sure how to do that yet.
Yeah.
Because in my context, I seem to, and this is not bad, or it's just what it is that I have a lot of people after the service that I want to talk to.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people who need to talk, and it just feels like it's tough to have that space where I'm able to like consistently be at the welcome center. So like when you were on staff here, I remember you were almost always like, hey, I'll be by the net. You basically did that, which was great, because then I could go crawl into my room. Yeah. I could hide in a room. Yeah. So that's what I actually want to do now. I was like, because I don't do the end, I don't do like our ending send off or whatever. Yeah. We have somebody else do that. And I'm like, partly I just want to like go hide somewhere, So like, it sounds terrible, but it's not because I don't like people. It's just like it's just more like I'm really hungry. Mostly I want a taco. That's what,
oh, that's funny.
So okay. But I think part of the follow up would be a compelling reason to come back.
Yeah.
So like that's what I'm thinking right now about is like, okay, what's our compelling reason to come back?
That's a good question.
Like so we're doing this sermon series on reasonable faith, right? I wonder, like, is that our compelling reason? Like, hey, next Sunday, Pastor Luke is going to be talking about XYZ. That might be one. Or next week we're gonna, because actually this might be it. We're giving a portion of our offering to a nonprofit locally.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah. So that might be like, hey, next week we're going to announce who we're giving this check to or whatever, And so, so that there's a lot of different ways, but I think you have to communicate that. Like, totally. Assume people are sitting there as a captive audience, and you have an opportunity to be winsome, to communicate about Jesus, and to tell them why should you come back? Because because I think it's about casting vision, and this is where pastors, preachers need to really work on this. It's like, give people a compelling reason why they should be a part of what God's doing in your community. Like, don't take back, And I'm going to do that a lot in the sermon, I think. But so I think
I think that's like, if you've got a sermon series, or like that's something so simple that you can just be like, hey, we're going to be continuing our sermon series, and we're going to be looking at this next week. Or something
super controversial.
Pick your most controversial topic
of all time.
Speak on that.
Go all the way in. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of pastors who maybe haven't thought about this yet. Yeah. And I was just like, oh no, okay, do we need to do something crazy for next week or whatever? Like, no, don't.
Grand prize, we're giving away a car. Come back next Sunday.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But
because there is some truth to. I had a professor that told me, what you win them with, you have to keep them with.
Oh, that's good.
And it was really helpful for me, because it was a commentary on this local church that was like doing a car giveaway and flat screen TVs and stuff. And it was like, I think there's a nuance there, right? Because I think on one hand it's like, well, there's going to always be certain things that we want to extend. We want to be kind, and we want to extend, and we give welcome gifts to first time visitors. But there is a balance there, right? So like, if people are only coming because you give away cars, it's like if it's Oprah, you get a car and you get a car, then what, when there's no more cars, what do you do, right? But
or what you might want to think about is like, you might want to just plan your maybe your social gathering events for that following Sunday.
Yeah. No,
so
totally,
you're not doing anything out of the blue. You're just planning it around that. And so you can be like, hey, we're going to be having this
Yeah.
We're going to be having a taco truck outside next Sunday,
No,
whatever. You know what I mean?
I was just thinking. So we're going to do on Cinco de Mayo. We're going to do a taco baptisms and tacos. And if it were ever that Easter landed the week before, May 5th, and it was on a Sunday, that would be so awesome.
Man.
Yeah, because I'd be like, yes, the alignment of everything.
So many high church people just crawling in their skin with you.
It's true. It's true. Well, that's the problem with the high church folks that don't like tacos. I just don't care, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so
is
it? So here's a thought. This is hopefully this is coming out on the week of Holy Week, and maybe if you're a pastor or a church leader and you're wondering, is it too late? No, I don't think it's too late. If it's Saturday night at 11 p.m., it might be too late to make some of these changes, but. I mean, what I've found in our local church and a lot of different churches that I've helped out in the past is that it's just little tweaks, right? Like a lot of these things are not very. Just go into your service planning, go into every execution of every different role that you have space for doing ministry, from your greeters to your announcements to your preaching to your music. If you just start with the premise that there are people in the room that do not know the secret handshakes, they don't know the code language. They are maybe have a little anxiety. Do what you can to help them relax, feel welcomed. Clarity is kindness. If you do all of those things, I think you can make a huge difference.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So
no, I think, and I'm also just thinking about like churches, like because the average church is like 65 people, and they might be pastor going, we might get like 5 people or whatever.
Great.
It's like that's awesome. Like.
Totally. Start
like,
5's great.
And don't like be. I don't know. I wonder if like some pastors also might be like, oh, we're only 65 people, so like, But it's like there's so many people that are looking exactly for like a smaller church that aren't wanting like
I am
exactly.
Sounds amazing.
Exactly.
Actually, let me say one thing about that. So this gets to because part of what we're talking about is the fruit of having and developing and maintaining a culture that has hospitality and mission ingrained in it. So let's just propose that there's church pastors out there, leaders that are maybe not, they don't have that yet. And they're like, how do I get that? So it takes time.
Oh, totally.
So like it's not going to happen overnight. I've been a part of several churches where it took time to establish culture and to shift culture, and being a change agent is hard, and it's a long process for sure. So it's okay. Take your time. Don't chill out. Yeah, chill out. But on top of that too, one thing that I know is really hard in the church community I was a part of before was, or one of the churches I was a part of is, like when we started introducing ourselves in this church of 70 people, when you knew everybody, there was constant like, oh, well, why would I do that? I already know everybody. And which is like fair point, but I basically was like, okay, but we have to get comfortable with this for when 1 or 2 new people do come. And also in a room of 70 people or 60 people or even 50 people, I can't always see everybody. Like there might be more new people around than you realize. So, but what I realized and what I found is that when I started introducing myself every single Sunday to a congregation that all knew me, it was helping reinforce to them that we want to be outward leaning. So like they are seeing, oh, like our pastor actually cares about being hospitable and welcoming and intentional, because that's intentionality, right?
Totally.
So I think that if you just start with some of those little tweaks, you can totally make a difference. And it doesn't matter if you're in a church of 15 to 4,000. I mean, really, right?
I think and I think that like what I hear you say is like just focus on being healthy. Like if you can focus on being intentional and healthy.
That's not the camera.
Oh, okay.
One of our monitors just went out, so
I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I think those are like thinking about practices that you can do there, because I would love to be like, I don't need to be part of a 200-person church. Like I would, like you say, like I would love to be a part of a 60, 70 healthy church. Like if it's healthy, like
healthy
awesome.
is there. Because healthy is missional. Healthy is discipling. Healthy is going to be, worshiping. It's going to develop community, right? There's a lot of different aspects, and like the size of the church is not indicative of health necessarily. And so, okay, so it's not too late, I guess, is my point.
Exactly.
So, all right, we covered it all.
We got it.
Problem solved.
Well, I mean, we went a bit over, but that's fine. We don't really have a stock clock.
I don't have a stock time.
Yeah, I was like, no, it doesn't. I don't even know why. But this is great. Any last things that you need to get out of your chest or anything like that?
No.
Okay. I'm actually going to say this, but like, be like Luke and like try get your sermon done by Wednesdays, because that has never happened before, and I'm still in shock that that's happening. So, but yeah,
I'm a tinkerer. Okay.
But as always, like, would love to hear from you, like, have any questions or what you all are planning, or if there's anything that we missed and we're like, oh, we should also think about this or whatever. Like, we would also love feedback.
Leave your advice in the comments. And if this was helpful, share it. Like Wes was saying, it would really be helpful. So
awesome. All right. Peace.